Welcome to the A.L.L podcast.
We're the Academy of Logic and Light. I'm Meagan.
I'm Kat.
I'm Julie. We are an ethical community education platform that provides a safe space for people to practice their spirituality without indoctrination.
All right, we're here again. So we've only officially released one podcast so far. I'm working on the second one, and we're now recording for a third or fourth, depending on how this all works. How are you? How did you guys feel about the first one? How it went? Any thoughts or how it came together? Anything like that?
I loved sitting down and talking with you guys and putting our vision out on something that others can hear it for once, because normally it's just us behind closed doors and texts. So it was kind of nice just to put it all out there with our passion.
I agree. I think too, having it out there now, I feel I was having so much anxiety about it that now that it's just out in the world, for this one, I'm like, okay.
Right.
We're basically vets now.
Yeah.
Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Professionals.
Pros. It's called pros.
We're podcasters. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question about empathy. When did you guys first know that you were empaths?
I never did. I still don't.
Oh.
Just ignorant bliss.
Honestly, that might be better sometimes.
No, but I do just feel like it was slowly things started adding up. And honestly, I personally would never use the word empath to describe myself. And so it's so hard to be like, oh yeah, I realized I was an empath at this point, because for me, it's been my whole life. And I relate it a lot to the way that my intuition works is very empathic, right? And I relate a lot of that into it. And so my whole life, I've just been learning how to deal with all of the different hits that I get and things that happen to me throughout the day. And so because of that, I feel like I've just been dealing with it. It's who I am, it's so a part of me that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm an empath. I'm like, no, I'm Meagan. That's just how my spirituality and my abilities and gifts kind of more manifest. If that makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. I was going to say something rather similar. I think the first time I heard the phrase empath as being a person was probably 2018 or 2019, fairly recently. Because for my whole childhood, I just thought that this was being a human. I thought everyone had this capacity to feel each other. And it wasn't until I was probably middle school or high school that I started to be if people are kind of mean, if you can feel how other people feel, it's weird that people are mean, and then I kind of was but there still has to be more people that are like this than not. So I just thought that was normal. Everyone just had the capacity to feel other people's feelings. So it wasn't until fairly recently that somebody pointed out no, that's what being an empath is. There aren't people that have that. But I do disagree with that statement. I do think that everybody has the capacity for it. I think that some people, and obviously especially children, you can see it in children, especially young children, it's second nature. I think a lot of times people are conditioned out of it. And especially if you live in a household or a part of society where you're being told that you need to have a thick skin. Because to me, a big part of that ability in myself is my sensitivity. I'm super sensitive, but that sensitivity allows me to be able to navigate through all of these feelings of not just myself, but other people. And I do think that if I had a thick skin, I wouldn't have the ability that I have. But also, I don't really resonate with the term empath either. I think it's, like you were saying, Megan, I think it's just such a part of the way that I navigate the world. To me, it's not like an ability or a skill. It's just like such a part of who I am that I don't really, I mean, I understand that those characteristics of what a typical empath is defined as are characteristics that I hold. But I also think that a lot of times that phrase or that terminology is a little bit overused in this kind of culture.
Overused and also underused in other areas.
Yeah. What about you, Julie?
My dad, oddly enough, I'm a pastor's kid, and early on he told me that I was an empath, and I didn't know what that meant, and he didn't really know. I don't remember like what else came from that. I just remember him telling me like, hey, you can feel other people's emotions. Not all of the emotions you're feeling are yours. And that was a very like useful tool as a kid. It was like the most like witchy thing I remember like from a really young age, but I didn't really like comprehend it until I became a flight attendant.
Oh God.
And then it was like, oh shit, this is too much.
Yeah.
This is a lot of people feeling like aggressively large feelings, either of sadness, leaving a loved one, or excitedness, going to see someone, or like anger because they're on the wrong flight, or someone lost their luggage, or all kind of very strong feelings. And that's a lot of people in a metal tube for too long.
Yeah.
But that was like a vital part for me, like having the word to know where to search at least. Then I found like Empath Survival Guide for Dummies. Like the OG. I went back. I was like, I need to learn about this. Because it was weird. I just had like an overwhelming amount of feelings in public places. And I had been used to being in public places that were churches with all these feelings. And that's a different string of emotions for sure.
Yeah.
Than an airport.
Oh, absolutely.
But
Yeah.
the Empath Survival Guide for Dummies actually talked about being in airports and little tiny protection things. So I was like, okay, there's obviously something to this. So I'm going to investigate it some more.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah. I like that. Well, and something you kind of touched on, Kat, was that like the home you're raised in can have a effect on it. And honestly, not only the people who have to get tough because they're told to be tough, but I also think there's a large portion of people who just don't have space held for them. And so they kind of put up these boundaries that are, you know, they don't have a safe space to have their boundaries, and they're open to other people. And because of that, they have to create a box that they put themselves in, and they really kind of lose a lot of that connection that they may have had when they were younger. Because I mean, an empath's like greatest tool is the fact that they can put up barriers and keep themselves and their energy like to their own, or at the very least like cleanse out the energy that's not theirs. And so, but if you are doing that too much to a point that you have like a constant prickly like barrier around you that nothing's going to penetrate, then you lose that connection that you have. And I think that is something that happens to people as well.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. Also, I think that made me think of this too. I think that along that same vein, there's, you know, if you're in a household where your parents or your family doesn't really understand that or know much about it, you're navigating it blindly. And I think that a lot of times, I mean, almost every single person that I know that has this sensitivity, this capability, used drugs and alcohol in their youth, because it's the only, like, it's something that you find that shuts it down. It's the only, like, one of the only ways I think a lot of people turn to that, because they don't know how to turn off this all these feelings that are coming at them that they're feeling all the time. They don't understand what it is or what to do with it. And so they just, if I'm numb, I can't feel any of it.
Yeah,
which I think is
definitely been guilty of.
Yeah, same. Which I think is a discussion that more people need to be having, especially with young people. That like, if you're feeling overwhelmed, like you're feeling too many feelings, like maybe all those feelings aren't yours. And how do we create boundaries, and how do we make sure that what we're feeling is ours and we can own that, and everything else we need to learn how to, get rid of. Because I do think that there comes a time in, early adolescence where you start to try to navigate that, right? Like kids, we keep pretty protected and pretty like, oh, like, we understand when they cry or whatever, they're going to have tantrums. That's normal. But as a kid gets older, we shut them down and we're like, could be in a baby or whatever other nonsense that we say once a kid reaches a certain age, that they don't understand how to navigate feelings. And so they start masking, which hopefully will start changing for the future of kids. I think more people are becoming aware of it, like through our generation, and not to say that other generations haven't, but I do think that it's becoming a lot more common, which is good.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the quickest ways to like do that quick energy work, is just be like, okay, what are my feelings and what is not mine, and then leave that behind. It's like a quick and simple meditation that can help a little bit. I have a couple of friends that never even heard of the word empath before. And then two of them were like, oh my gosh, I feel such and such and such and such. And I was like, I think you're feeling my stuff. And they were like looking at me like I was crazy. I was like, you literally described exactly what I'm feeling. And that just means like your protection isn't as strong as it could be. And let me show you how to do that. But that was like brand new information to them. And I was like, okay, well, here we go.
So cool.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because at least in my experience, at least identifying it with a name, it helps organize. Just organize it and compartmentalize it a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, and
easier to tackle.
There's a lot of stuff. I mean, even when I was looking for resources on like empaths, a lot of psychology stuff came up, because like empathy obviously is a huge factor in how we relate to other people. And psychology has kind of like also started implementing kind of the empaths, and that some people are just more prone to like taking on everybody else's stuff than themselves. And so I think it's a good name in that it doesn't exclude it to like a spiritual thing. Because if I told you, oh, your empathy is just like your intuition, you should listen to yourself, and it's you picking up on these things, like you're psychic, surprise, and that's you picking up on these things. That would be, I mean, so weirdly received, versus saying, oh, hey, like you're an empath, you're just picking up on other people's emotions. Here's probably why you feel that way. Like, let's find something to get better. And so I think having a specific like diagnosis for it is good. And then people can kind of build from there on whatever way that they want to get it out of their life or have more of it in their life.
Or even just being like, okay, empath, kid, that just means I have to have stronger barriers when I go outside. Or I need to actually be in touch with my feelings so I know what they are when I go outside. Because how can you literally separate them if you don't know you're feeling, which is a problem of a Capricorn.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Megan, because I actually recently read an article that was talking about the psychology behind empaths and how there's a lot of trend or like a lot of incoming data that's showing that children that lived in chaos when they were young, especially if they had parents that were borderline neglectful or had some sort of substance use disorder tend to be more empathic because they had to learn how to navigate their parents' feelings and predict what the chaos was going to happen in their house for their own psychological protection from a very, very young age. And so you learn how to hone in those skills to be able to pick up on people's feelings, even if it's just like a shift in body language or like a facial expression. Immediately you're like, oh, they're about to get mad, which I thought was super interesting, that they are actually studying what causes empaths. I don't think that's the only path, obviously, but I thought that was super interesting. It makes a lot of sense. And it was totally not something I ever had thought about before.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. That's very interesting. It's a cool like theory or thought to kind of, but it's
just
great
ways
that they're
to make
studying
sense
it.
of the world.
Yeah.
Huh?
Can we please have a podcast that says, surprise, you're a psychic? That's adorable.
Maybe.
Surprise, you're an empath. What are some of the things that you guys do to protect your energy?
Thanks for asking, Julie. In July, we actually did a little gathering for our full moon event and our new moon event, sorry. And I put together a like calling in your own power kind of discussion. And so we talked about it, and it had a really great practice. And you talked a little bit about having this as like a daily practice, Julie, but taking a moment at the end of the day, or just like when you're getting in the shower, and just being like, okay, I'm letting go of all the energetic ties that are not mine, and just kind of releasing those. And those can obviously work on like a much deeper level than just the empathy. I don't know what to call it to keep in my head. Anyway, but I feel like kind of releasing other people's energy that I've been storing for them helps. And then I just try to call in my own power. So, you know, any pieces that I have that are out in the world that I want to like keep for myself so I can feel myself. And like, so I had a energetic body work done, and she was like, your aura is like Swiss cheese. I was like, what do you mean? And so we talked about like how to like strengthen your aura. But I feel like calling in my own power is what strengthens my aura, because I'm essentially finding those little pieces of Swiss cheese and putting them back in the holes. I'm like, oh no, you're supposed to be here, and putting the puzzle back together. And then I am able to like feel myself more, and I have like, I'm more present in my body, and I have just, you know, I feel more whole as a person instead of, you know, way out there.
That's a really great answer. I should get better at doing things before bed. I think that would probably be helpful for me. Most of what I do is in the morning, in my morning meditation. A part of my morning meditation, because I'm a Cancer Sun, Scorpio moon. So like I lean a little bit into the water in the morning, and I just kind of like, you know, visualize like I'm floating in the ocean and letting go of like all the things that don't belong to me, allowing what's meant for me to flow in and what is not meant for me to flow out. Just being held in the universal current is what I say in my meditation, which just kind of helps me get grounded and like ready for the day. And then if I start to feel overwhelmed throughout the day, I've gotten pretty good about like circling back. Like, is this mine? Where's my boundary? Like, am I being lazy or whatever, you know, depending on where I am. Also, I am really good about if I know I'm going to go into a place that is unfamiliar with a lot of people, where I know that I might be triggered or a little bit overwhelmed, I'm just like, kind of wall up a little bit. I'm like, extra boundary. We're going to feel, you know, like we're going to like wall up a little bit as we go through this. But I definitely, I'm glad you said that, Meagan, because I do think that it would be good to do stuff at night too, just to like get the residuals off.
That's part of my morning routine and my evening routine. I have the same thing. I say 3 times in the morning. I cut all energy cords with gratitude. Thank you for the lesson. Send it back with love, light, blah, blah, blah. And then 3 times I call back my energy morning and night, because I astral project at night. And so I want to be protected before I go to sleep too, because dream workers do a lot of work and we don't always know what we're going to do, or we don't always remember. So I reset 2 phases of my day with and block them in with that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One of the quick ones oh, sorry.
You're good.
Go ahead.
What else did you have, Julie?
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the quick exercises I learned as a flight attendant, like if you don't really have time to do much, is literally the energy zip. And it literally start at your feet and zip up your energy. And that's your little barrier. And just doing the motion and visualizing it, for some reason, it just works. It's just like a really quick thing. You're walking, like you said, into a bar. You're like, no, thanks. I don't want to feel what's happening here.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, I like to like think of cleansing it off. And so I'll like brush. I'll just brush. If I had a feeling or like some sort of interaction, I'll just kind of be like, oh no, I got to get rid of this. Like, there it goes. But I also think that as I've been like, this kind of goes back into the calling in my own power, but as I've been learning to like embrace my own authenticity, I've been realizing that I can also use that like to create my barrier. And when I was younger and I was hanging out with my friends, and this is a little off topic, but I just was starting to relate it. So I don't know if it will all circle back the way I'm thinking, but when I was in junior high, me and my friends would go out and hang out, but we were like the shy, quiet, like nervous, like girls. And that was just, you know, we're kind of the wallflower type girls. Like we were friendly, but we weren't like weird in public, right? So even though we were maybe weird when we were all hanging out. And so we had a friend who would just be weird all the time. And we loved her. And we're like, oh my gosh, like you're so you. And it's the most beautiful thing. Like, how do you stand on a stage and act? Like she got into acting and we're like, how do you do that? Like we can't, like, it's not for us. And she would just say, paint your box. And so I think that that's kind of a fun way, because honestly, I mean, when you're trying to hide yourself because of you've worried about how other people are perceiving you, that's a form of empathy. Like you're so focused on the way they feel about you that you're not being true to yourself. And so anyway, I just had this thought while we were all discussing it, but she just like, paint your box. Just, you know, there's nobody else out there. It's you. This paint is a barrier and nothing's going to come through or see you that you don't want to. And it's great. So that's always stuck with me. And then, so it's funny to just kind of think of it as like creating that energetic barrier in the form of painting a box, right?
That's cute. I like it.
Yeah, that is cute. That makes me think, when I was in my class to do my crystal healing certification, that was like one of the very first paths I took on this kind of alt spiritual journey that I went on. That was like back in 2013 or 14. So that was like really the first time that I had ever had conversations with people about like protecting energy, like how to protect your energy and how to, you know, keep your safe space. And I started doing this practice, which I don't do as often anymore, but every once in a while I will, where I will visualize myself as a specific crystal. So a lot of times when I feel like I have to transmute other people's energy, like if I'm at a concert or someplace that's like super chaotic, I am a tourmaline. Like I visualize myself as the tourmaline, just like funneling that energy, just moving it through, which I think can be super helpful. Not just for that, but like sometimes when I'm like feeling real low, like if it's a bad hormonal day or something, then I'm like, oh, I'm a rose quartz today. I'm just sucking in all the love I can get. Just give it to me.
I love that.
Yeah, that's so great, Kat. I love it so much.
I've never heard of that. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm like, okay. That's also brings up a good point, though, is also as empaths, you carry energy. What do you do with the energy as you're feeling it? And then there's ways to cleanse your energy, but transmuting is such a cool fucking way to like move it and make it into something positive, and you even use that energy for your own energy. Like, I'm like trying to explain it because I can like see the visual in my head, but like raging, like just say like you had like a really crazy like experience with road rage and you just like scream in your car and then you come home and like clean your house. I don't know. You can like channel some of that energy and like transmute it back out there, but use it as a positive thing.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. If I have a really overwhelming day that didn't expect to have, like something happens that is like all of a sudden I have to go to my kid's school or like something crazy happens at work, almost always that night I go full, I'm a kid in my bedroom with a microphone, headphones in, and rock star mode. Just like, lip syncing, dancing around, because I have to move that energy.
Yeah.
I can't just let it sit inside of me. Or I'll go on like a good power walk and just got to get it out, whatever it is.
I think my poor neighbors downstairs are like, she lives alone, right? I'll put my watch on for like the dance mode and I'm like, okay, I'm dancing. You better count these calories.
Yeah.
But it helps, like singing, dancing, like I said to my friends, you literally can't be sad when you're singing. I mean, you can like be sad, but like in a good way, right? You're transmuting it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can't be in a bad mood if you're dancing.
No, you can't. It's hard.
It is.
I think in the moment, if I'm having something where I'm like feeling somebody's really strong emotion, I just push it. I ask that Mother Earth, Pachamama, to take it and transmute it. To
hug a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Put your feet in the grass.
Like, this isn't mine. If it, like, take this and transmute it into something better, something more positive, send it back to them if they need it back. Like, if someone's like getting upset with me or yelling or being super aggressive, I'm like, psh, and then just like imagine it as a cycle, like it's coming at me, but it's not going into me, down into the earth, and then sending it back to them through the ground up as like light and peace to calm down whatever their core issue is in that moment.
Yeah. Also, that was the other part. What, Kat, do you recommend crystals as far as protection when you're out in public?
So it's kind of general. Black attracts light. Like, black wants light. So if you're looking for, like, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but that's also why like a lot of witchy people, I think, intuitively like black, because black wants to absorb light. And so any of the black tourmaline's my go-to. I like the vibe of tourmaline. I know a lot of people like obsidian, which is also great. The snowflake quartz, that's like has like or not quartz, onyx, that's like black, that has like the little white specks in it, I think is really good for transmuting energy as well. Honestly, I think that most amethyst, clear quartz, rose quartz pretty much most general crystals are going to be pretty good for transmuting. If it's something specific you want, I would make sure that it's a pointed crystal and it points down. Like if it's hanging on a like necklace or a pendant, that the point points down so that it's going into the earth.
Cool.
To transmute that energy.
I like that.
Yeah, me too.
That's what, when it comes to crystals, at least, not that I know what's like transmuting, but I always wear tiger's eye when I'm going to like a crowded place, or I feel like I just want an extra barrier for myself. I feel like tiger's eye is what I gravitate towards to do that. And I am far from any expert on crystals, but that's probably what I have the most of.
Yeah, that's kind of 101. Whatever your intuition is telling you is the one. Doesn't, like, books are going to give you kind of a generalized idea, but if you have a connection with a specific crystal, that's the right one. It doesn't, like, even if the book's like, oh, this is for attracting love, but you're like, well, I feel protected when I wear it, then that's the one you wear for protection. Like, you know, all that information around what crystals are supposed to be used for is pretty generalized information.
Yeah, it is definitely like a vibe. I think I like the ones particularly for me that are, you don't have to cleanse, like selenite and obsidian, onyx. I think some of those protection ones are like pretty, like you don't really have to like charge and cleanse them a lot, which is for me when you're dealing with like heavy shit of 150 passengers on an airplane, you don't really have time in a 14-hour day to like cleanse all of it out. So for me, those are like my favorite, like this beautiful selenite, but I can't wear this to work. But my pockets are full of crystals.
I'm just picturing all your crystals like on an airplane window.
Oh my God. I would. If there was like, if they gave us any space, I would have the whole thing decorated. My airplane would be the funnest.
You know, those like a shower caddy that has suction cups on it.
Oh my God, genius. I'm like, excuse me, you have a bigger window than I do as a flight attendant. Can I charge my crystals?
Yeah, perfect.
No one would be surprised.
No.
Oh, that's funny.
I have a question for you both. I can answer it too, but so as empaths or people who help with other people's energy, like, so now we're kind of bridging from your everyday life to like working as a spiritual like worker and helping people process these things. What in your practice like helps you either clear the energy of the last client, or like what kind of energy are you willing to take on? Anyway, just, I am very new to like the doing work for other people. And so I'm just interested what your practices are with those.
Do you want to go first, Kat?
Sure. So I keep a bowl of water that has salt in it in the room. And when I'm working on someone, I'm pushing all of whatever I'm trying to move into that bowl, because water's a conduit and salt's a cleanser. So I'm giving that energy a place to go to, because I have definitely learned that the hard way, right? Like energy doesn't die, it just moves. It just changes. So if I'm working on someone and I'm helping them process something or move through something so that it's no longer attached to their body and it doesn't have a place to go, it will go to me, because I'm the next energetic being or, you know, piece of energy that it can attract to. So that I have always a conduit of some kind in the room that I can direct that energy to. I know another practitioner that does this with copper, that keeps a big piece of copper in their space that sends it to that, and then they wash the copper after each session that they do. For me, I use water, and then I just dump the water out, and kind of like, I don't want to say a prayer, but for lack of a better word, like thank the water for holding this energy, may it move on to someplace better, you know, so that it's not stuck to me. And then again, just making sure that my boundaries up so that it doesn't, and then, you know, shaking off anything that may residually just be in the aura fields, trying to penetrate or trying to move through. So that's generally what I do.
I like that a lot. That's a good tip and trick.
Yeah.
And like more focused. Mine's a little more chaotic. But like before people come, like I cleanse my space like pretty directly, and I don't even tap into people's energy until about 5 minutes before they arrive, just so I can do all my own work for my apartment and my cats and me. But I always have my clients facing their feet towards a window or a door, and I always have one open window. For me, that just makes the most sense. Just like let it go and not have a lot of stuck energy in there. But I do a very thorough saging before and after a client, and I'll usually use my voice singing a chant or something along those lines. And then I kind of sit for like a few minutes after everything and just feel if there's anything that's left in them, if I'm feeling anything not mine. And then kind of go from there. But that's pretty much my quickest and a standard practice. You're always going to see a window open in my house anyways, but especially when I'm doing energy work.
Cool.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I haven't been doing it for a long time, but I feel like things that have kind of helped me, because I definitely, not that I don't do necessarily the same level, but when I read tarot for people, I definitely I'll ask people to cut the deck for me, because I want like their energy to like be all over for my reading, because it helps me tune in. But before and after, yeah, I cleanse, and I sit on a bar of selenite. I can't say it, but I always like put it somewhere near my base. Like sometimes I'll put it under my feet, or I'll sit on it, because I just want kind of my grounding connection to purify, right? And so I have never thought of it. I've just always done that because I'm like, this feels right. But it's so interesting, Kat, what you had talked about earlier of like sending the energy that's not yours, like down, and it cleansing that way. And so I'm like, it just has always been, okay, I'll sit on it. And then that way my connection is good. So that's cool. And I think having that knowledge now will help me direct the energy better so that it doesn't stick around, and it helps me like process what I took on. So that's cool. And then I always will like wipe something with either my hand or a cloth. Like that's just like, I wipe myself off with my hands to get rid of energy, and I'll wipe off my card decks. Like I'll even go through, if it was a heavy reading, I will wipe off individual cards like with a microfiber cloth and like get the energy off. But that to me, I'm like, this is cleansing it. Or I love Florida water, but that one's just my quick and easy, like, okay, I'm just gonna cleanse this area, put it on my hands. It dries fast enough. I can handle cards.
I like that. I forgot. Yeah. I also have my clients on a grounding mat. So then if it's like a particularly challenging thing, I'll go and sit on a grounding mat and then hold their heads while they're on a grounding mat too. Cause sometimes you just need assistance.
Yeah, for sure. It's part of my,
I also use a lot of sound.
Yeah. Sounds good. As part of my like meditation every morning, I reconnect myself with the center of the earth so that I can just really like, imagine that cord from my center running down through my feet all the way into the center of the earth, so that when I feel like I need to send something, that connection is already established. in, as part of my morning routine, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that's just an important one to start your day with. Kind of like that. Yeah. Just like that part of that morning routine. My shower, it's kind of like that one. I do a shower meditation and I just draw the Reiki symbols on my hands and go through each chakra like quickly in the shower. You're already washing yourself. And then I imagine my feet tapping into the root system, and I ask for permission for stability and groundedness and to help me transmute the energy of the day. And then I connect to source. And then I do 3 deep breaths where I channel the energy below and the energy above at the same time and blast it through my body. And that is for days where I don't have the energy to be alive. It really helps. Yeah. Like going to work for a 14-hour day, I was like, I'm going to need some assistance here. It's a heavy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I might have been talking to you about this, Julie, but I am a bath person. Like if it was a heavy energy day, I'm feeling physically or emotionally or mentally drained, I need a bath. I will take 4 baths in a day if I'm not feeling well. Like, sorry, I gotta go. Like, bye, family. And it's just like the one place, and it's not, I don't know. I haven't always felt like a huge connection to water, but when it is a big day for me, I have to like get in, at the very least, like stand in a shower, because I think it just helps move the energy so much more than, a storm is great if it's windy outside, but it's hard to like feel like some of the other, I'm not going to light myself on fire, but that does sound the most effective element. But water is just so much more like you can feel it on your skin. It's like a sensory of being clean, and also like
you can make it the right temperature.
Exactly. Everything gets so connected.
That's what. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and also like fire isn't a conduit and wind isn't a conduit. So like water is going to pull that energy out in a way that other elements aren't. And generally, if you're taking like a hot bath, it's going to be more relaxing, and it like opens your pores. So it's also literally like pulling things out of your skin too. So you're like really detoxing just all the way. I think a lot of people don't put those two things together, where like so many people are like, oh, I take baths for self-care. And it's like, yeah, you're overwhelmed. Like, you're holding a lot of shit probably. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that is a really powerful one. Do you guys put herbs in your baths?
Yeah.
Like
I usually do like some sort of essential oil in salt and then put that in, because like herbs, sometimes I'll do rosemary, like a couple sprigs of rosemary, but I don't like cleaning it out after I get out of the tub. So then I'm like, then I'm not relaxed if I have to clean the bath after I get out of the bath.
That's fair. I have like a little strainer at the bottom, so it just
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, I'm an herb bath person. I'm like, but those are for like serious days. I'm like, okay, we're putting in some mugwort, some marigold or whatever. Make sure they're not toxic first.
Yeah.
I want it to be a whole Meagan stew, but I usually just use bath salts.
A Meagan stew. I love it.
I swear I had something. Oh, speaking of baths, have either of you ever tried a yoni bath? Or like steamer, or what do they call them?
Yes, I'm a promiscuous woman. I like to steam my yoni.
I know people who like, they just don't have a bath in their apartment, and it's a way that they like use it kind of like you would a bath to like cleanse and ground and all the things.
It feels good.
Yeah. And that's why I was like, I want to hear more, because one of the only person I've really heard talk about them before is someone who's like super witchy. And I was like, she was like, this helps me. It's great. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, I need one, because she just had the greatest things to say about it. And she's like, and sometimes you don't have time for a bath, and sometimes you can't mess up your hair, but you need to like get rid of shit. And she's like, and it's great.
It does. It feels nice. Don't do it if you're menstruating, obviously, but it is nice to do before or after. It just like feels good. It's like warm in a way that you didn't expect. It was just like, obviously steam's going up there, but you just, hard to imagine until you experience it.
Fair.
I think I've only done it like twice. Like, I've never gone to a place and had it done. I've just gotten like a bowl and then like put some herbs in it, and then poured boiling water, and then just like crouched over it, I guess, kneeled.
Yeah, with the like a skirt's helpful because it keeps the steam in there.
Yeah.
Flowing, and privacy curtain if you're into that.
Yeah.
The old retreats I used to work for out in the Tetons, we do it camping, which honestly, like the last day of camping, you just feel so gross anyways. It was so nice.
Yeah. That does sound great.
But I like to do it after like breakups.
Totally.
Yeah. Different types of energy cleansing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Gotta cleanse it all.
Right? Gotta cleanse it all. Cool, great. That was just, it popped in my head, so I'm like, let's talk about it.
Yeah, you gotta try it all. Yeah, you haven't? Let's do it.
I've not done it. Okay, next time we get together.
I have just enough for
our
like
next
one
podcast.
But actually, we could probably go down to the what's this? The Natural Law. They definitely have yoni steams already prepackaged with like the proper. Sometimes it, like for me, I don't know herbs enough to know like what's supposed to do what exactly, but it's nice when people already did the work. Etsy has a bunch of really cute ones that are nice.
Cool. Yeah.
And they smell good.
I love it.
And there's been some interesting reports about like other stuff, but like I'm not well versed enough to like talk about that. Just my own personal experiences.
Yeah. Very cool. Did you have any other questions about empaths, or do you have any like topic areas that you think we could talk about, Julie, that we've maybe missed?
I'm trying to think. So I think that might have been everything that was on my list. But
I have a question. If you recognize that somebody like is that maybe like you don't know, or maybe you do, that kind of has empathic tendencies, how do you bring that up to them? Do you just be like, hey, have you ever noticed this about yourself? Or like, has that ever happened to you where you ran into people where you're like, just so you know, surprise, you're an empath?
Actually, the weirdest one is when I'm high. My friends are like, oh, I feel super weird. Like, I feel like a little high, a little energetic, a little this. And I was like, that's definitely mine. That's the half a caffeine that I had and the half an edible I had before I got here. And then they're like, oh, wow. And I'm like, did you know you're an empath? And yeah, it's always been an interesting thing. But it's like very specific energies that let them know like that they're clearly not high. They're clearly not the same caffeinated.
Yeah.
Have you ever had anybody like push back against you on it? Like, no, that's not real or anything?
No, because I don't think I would even approach it if I didn't think that they were open to it, to be honest. Or it's also been like in a ceremonial setting, in like a group ceremony where someone's like, who has an autoimmune disease? And I'll be like, oh, it's me. I'm like, oh, we're heavy empaths, you know? It was like, oh, you just feel like the nerve. I don't think I would really address it to someone if I didn't think that they were open to it, to be really honest. I like to feel things out, or at least ask a few follow-up questions first to just like feel it out. Like, have you ever heard of an empath? Or do you feel like you're doing too much emotional work that's not yours?
Yeah.
Leading questions.
Yeah.
Investigative work.
Yeah. I feel like, and I know we're talking about empaths, but I feel like so much of my empaths-ness is like, it makes me feel psychic, right? So I went to a group Reiki thing, and me and my dad went together, and we were at Crystal Hot Springs doing Reiki with a group. And so we're standing in the hot springs while someone is floating, and everybody just kind of helps them float while the like Reiki practitioner does the Reiki on them. And so my dad's and I were holding this kid's legs, and he was probably like 17, and we were holding about where his knees are, and I just like put my hand on top of his knee, and I was just like, I had the distinct impression that I was like, oh my gosh, like his knees need so much energy. And it was so weird because my dad did the exact same thing. And the lady at the end was like, because the practitioner was his mom. And so she's like, I thought it was really interesting that you both like had the exact same reactions. You both gravitated towards his knees when you could have been holding his calves or wherever. And she's like, and it's so weird because like he plays sports and he's actually having knee problems right now. Mm. And it was so weird. And this was kind of like at the beginning of it all, but like I was picking up on this kid's energy, and it like, because of that, I like gravitated and I had those impressions, you know, and my intuition, my like abilities, my gifts were being able to tap into that. So as like bad as it is to like take on other people's energy, right? Like we don't want to lose ourselves in other people or be overwhelmed because of other people, but being able to have a balance and being able to take on that energy and like, I wouldn't say take on, but to interact with that energy is our gifts. So if you are empathic, like if you are an empath, you're probably like a little bit psychic at least. And because of that, you know, you can tap into a lot of things. Like about a year ago, I made my husband and I go to the dermatologist and get like full skin checks because I was like, I'm so worried about cancer right now. Like we're going to go to the dermatologist. We're going to get everything checked top to bottom. We got to do this. And so we went and everything was fine. But I found out my mom had also gone to the dermatologist and had melanoma. Oh, wow. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like I just felt like I was a crazy person because I was so worried. I'm like, oh my God, we have to get our skin checked. We have to get our skin checked. And we did. And like, luckily we were okay. But I was totally like picking up on my mom's energy and what she was going through. And it like, I even told her, I was like, oh my gosh, you're the reason why I've been having this thought, because it just would not leave my mind. And so it was so weird. But like things like that are, you know, a way that my interacting with her energy was a little bit psychic. And the worst part about our gifts are that we don't get a direction. We just have to follow it. And so I did what I could, but I should have called everyone and been like, go to the dermatologist today. Go to the dermatologist today.
But also by you going and setting an example, maybe other people were like, oh, maybe I should go check this out too.
Yeah. I remember telling everyone I talked to, after I talked to my mom especially, I was just like, go get your skin checked. I went to the dermatologist. Go get your skin checked. It's great. Like just everyone I talked to, I was like, have you checked your skin yet? And I'm like, well,
why not, right? If you're exactly. You're trying to help people.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that does make a good point though, because like that's another way of transmuting some of this empath energy is that you can pick up, there's a time and a place for everything, but like you can pick up other people's things and just be like, hey, how are your knees doing? And it is like a psychic ability, but it is also like, it's an exercise. It's a muscle. You have to like use it and fine tune your skills because it's a gift. Excuse you. Please stop biting my book. Oh my gosh. I thought I didn't have children.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought that up, Megan, because I do think that there's a distinct difference there between feeling it and taking it. So like that's a huge part of my practice because I navigate that on people's or through people's bodies in my practice to find the spaces where they're holding like trapped emotion or trapped trauma. So I have to be able to feel it, but that doesn't mean I take it. I just find it and then work through it with them. And I think that a lot of times that can be scary for people because I think that, you know, a big part of it is learning how to create boundaries for yourself. And so there's kind of this, I think, assumption that if you feel it, then it's yours now. Like you've sucked it out of them or something, when in reality you can feel it and not have ownership of it, you know. Just recognize that it's there and then be like, okay, I see you. Here's what we're going to do about it.
Yeah. Feeling it doesn't define you and your feelings don't define you either. It's just like something to notice. And then what you do with it next is up to you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Kat, have you ever had an experience where you told them they were psychic or not psychic? What am I saying? Did you ever have an experience where you told
I
them
mean, same thing. I just was curious. I mean, same thing. I think most people that can recognize that and other people are like, they're not really approachable about it. Or they totally are. I haven't really been like prompted to say anything to anybody, because also I do feel like a lot of times people will get there on their own, and they should get there on their own, because I think that that's a part of the journey. But I just was curious if that had ever come up for either one of you.
Yeah. I can't think of a time, like I can think of that time when I was told essentially that I was like picking up on something. But yeah, not a time that I have really told somebody. I would say that I've noticed it in people before, but usually it's like my son, like he totally is, and he'll say something to me and I'll just be like, well, it's okay. Like that's a big emotion. Is it your emotion? Like, do you feel that way? Process it and then move on. But okay. Just to kind of change a little bit of pace, not pace, but just topic, but not topic. Here's another thought. I'm manic. So I was listening to a podcast to kind of like prepare because, like I said, I haven't done a lot of empath like study. I've definitely done a lot of like grounding, protecting, like that kind of study because I have an aura that's Swiss cheese apparently. But when I was listening to a podcast, they mentioned like if you work in an office building, sure, there's all the people that are there, but think of the lighting. So many people talk about like how horrible fluorescent lighting is, but they don't realize that like it's the way the energy moves through that light bulb is like creating this like chaotic energy, right? And so it's like an LED is a lot more like clean and just like a small amount of energy is going into it to make it bright. And so it's just so interesting because I had never really thought of like empaths picking up on energy that is from inanimate objects or like activities, not people, you know? So I thought that was really interesting.
Your phone.
Yeah. Have either of you? A phone's a great example.
100%.
I put Shungut on my phone. Because, and near my routers, I have 3 Shungite pyramids. I have coils and all the things for the EMF protection. And I know flight attendants that have EMF insoles for their shoes when they fly.
Oh.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I worked in an office, like full time at a desk for 8 hours a day, I definitely could notice, like maybe not so much from the lighting, but from the computer, like the computer screen, and like all the energy and everything that's happening, and the blue lights and the flickering and like all of the things just like coming at you for 8 hours a day. It's really intense.
Highly recommend a blue light, like screen protector,
Blocker,
a grounding mat, and anything EMF protecting if you are sitting in an office job. Highly recommend.
100%.
Even on my computer and my phone, both have blue light protectors. I need to put a shungite on my laptop, probably.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did have a little tiny story.
Yes.
Okay, so one time at band camp, sorry, I've like been sitting in front of this laptop all day and I'm caffeinated. Okay, I'm like, I need to get outside and like do things. I've been like cooped up sick. Okay, so this one time I went to a retreat and it was like kind of crazy because we're out in nature. It's a beautiful retreat and all new people. Everyone was like, no one knew each other. No one knew each other from Adam or anything. But there was like some big releases of energy around the campfire towards the end of the night. And like people were crying, working through some like pretty heavy stuff. But what I thought was interesting, actually, which made me take into account later, is that the empaths that were there woke up the next day feeling worse. And it was some sort of a disconnect between everyone trauma dumping and no one bridging the gap for the people who were very sensitive to pick up all that loose energy just swirling around. And they were waking up like, I feel tired. I had weird dreams. Like, I feel like so emotional and I don't know why. And I was like, wow, this is just like interesting for like group stuff to realize like they're trauma dump, but also let's go through the motions of what needs to happen for those participating and watching and holding space as well. Because like you said, that energy has to go somewhere, and we were at a fire, but we didn't designate anything to like put it into. So I think that the bowl of water would have even been helpful in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy how quickly, like, I really feel like a big part of mob mentality is like empathic. Like, once somebody gets hyped up and gets in this vibe, it's like contagious. Like, that's like picking up on other people's vibes. That's being empathic. So like, it goes in all sorts of different ways, you know, like mob mentality is totally like everyone starts getting in this place and there's nowhere for the energy to go. So it's just cycling into everyone all the time, like all over the place in the crowd.
Yeah.
Which can be super overwhelming and obviously dangerous if it gets left to just run wild, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds until it's just like chaos.
Yeah, which actually leads me to an interesting question. How do you know, we're talking about picking up energy, so how do you know if it's an anxiety that you should be paying attention because it's a warning, or how do you know that you're picking up other people's like anxious energy? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I feel like, and I still have a hard time like completely directing this, but usually if I get a very, very specific something, that's usually for me. Like, it's like, hey, don't drive with your friend tonight. Like, either you drive or don't go. And that was like the thought I had. And I was just like, well, that's weird. But like, we were driving to Evanston together. And I was just like, is there like, should I drive? And she's like, no, it's fine. Like, I'll drive. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, maybe I'm just being crazy. And then we went and we got in a car wreck on our way. And it was like, it stopped our trip. It was just like a trip out and back. So it like stopped our trip. The car wreck ended up being super bad. I had to have like, luckily, like our car was not too injured and both of us were very safe and we both got to go home that night. like straight from the wreck, but like the car that hit us flipped, and like there's all this crazy stuff that happened, and like it was this huge chain of events that like luckily yeah, like luckily we're all okay, but it was so specific of a like anxiety, because sometimes I'll be like, oh man, money, it sucks. And I'll be like, oh no, like, is this something that I should be like stopping to do something to address this? Or is this just like something else? And so I feel like when it's, you know, that intuitive hit for myself or my energy, like I have done a pretty good job of being like, oh, how specific was it? Like, did it give me a call to action and now I have to do one of these things? Those are mine. But if it's, you know, just kind of a, hey, here's like a weird idea, but like maybe you should like, you know, there's skin cancer. And I'm like, okay, skin cancer. Okay. Like, what do I do with this? I guess I'll just go to the doctor. So those are kind of what helped me. I also like to do things to help me tune into my own energy. So aside from just like calling in as a practice, I will read cards for myself and, you know, draw a card in a morning and see kind of what direction I'm taking. Or if I have a situation that I have questions about, I will draw cards about those, or I'll meditate, or even just journaling. There's something, I can't remember who started this, but there's like your morning pages where you just sit down and you just handwrite 3 pages. It doesn't matter, like, if you finish thoughts or what you say in it, like nothing that you put down matters. You just are getting it out. And I have processed so much of like what's for me, what's not, by just doing this. Cause I'll just be like, oh, cancer. Okay, that was weird. And then now I'm going to talk about my day. And it helps me like redirect, or like things that I notice coming up consistently in mornings is I'm like, oh, I should be doing this. You know, oh yeah, I need to be getting this better. And so when I'm doing my own practice and I'm making time for my own practice is when I feel like I'm kind of checking in with those hits that I get, or those like, the feelings that I'm like, is this mine? Should I be doing something with this? Like what needs to happen? And those are obviously like, I have time to process them generally, but I'll have to think a little more if I do anything like in the moment, like if I'm out somewhere or something. But Kat, do you have any?
Yeah, I think a big part of that is really knowing yourself and the way that your intuition speaks to you. Because for me, I just ask it, or I'll ask, you know, somebody in my crew. And by crew, I mean like people you can't see that hang out with me.
Spirit crew.
Yeah. So I'll just ask, and then like I know myself and my intuition enough to be like, oh yeah, that's mine, or no, that belongs to that dude over there, or whatever it is. Every once in a while, I can't tell, and usually when I can't tell, it's both. So like when I flew back from San Diego a couple weeks ago, I didn't really check the weather because it was like the middle of August. And I had checked the weather before I left. And everything looked good. But then like that big storm rolled through. Anyway, so when I dropped off the rental car on my way back to Salt Lake, after I dropped off the rental car and we were like headed to get on the shuttle to go to the airport from the rental car place, I just had this like super overwhelming wave of anxiety of like, maybe I shouldn't fly. And like, that's the worst fucking feeling you can ever get right before you get about to go on an airplane. But like, I'm not a great flyer in general. Like I do get some anxiety around flying, even though I know like the mechanics of it and the way that like, you know, jet streams work and turbulence is normal and like all the things, like I still am kind of an anxious flyer. Anyway, so I couldn't tell if that was like my anxiety or just like general airport anxiety. So I went into the bathroom, and generally, so then I'll muscle test if I can't tell. Do you guys know what muscle testing is?
But you should tell
For anyone
us.
that doesn't, yeah. For anyone that doesn't, it's where you kind of create a baseline of a yes and a no. So I do it by swaying. Like a lot of people will do it by like interlocking their fingers or like pushing on a hand. And then like you create a baseline of a yes and a no. And then you ask a question. And if, you know, your baseline is that no is weak, you'll be able to move your arm pretty easily if the answer is no. I do it by swaying. So I'll get grounded, I'll get centered and focused, I'll create a baseline, show me a yes in this moment, I'll usually rock forward, show me a no in this moment, I'll rock back, and then I'll ask a baseline question. My name is Catherine. Yes. I'm a lizard alien. No. So I have a baseline like yes or no, like a very obvious yes and a very obvious no. And then I'll say, you know, like, this anxiety that I'm feeling belongs to me. Yes. This anxiety also belongs to other people. Yes. Am I safe to continue on my journey today? Yes. Am I safe to be on this airplane? Yes. Like all of the things, like just checking in with myself and kind of, you know, the energy around me or the energy of the universe. Anyway, so then that was the flight that got like delayed in the sky, where we had to circle around for 45 minutes over Cedar City because the storm was like real bad at the airport, so we couldn't land. And then we hit the storm coming through and the turbulence was crazy. So like obviously there was something that, you know, like the energy was like, it's off, but it's you'll be fine. You know, like you're gonna get through it, but there's something happening, right? So the whole time on the plane I was like, you know, like, that's so weird that I would be so anxious, like everything's fine. And then as soon as the pilot came on, I was like, oh shit, okay, this is it. But then I still knew everything would be fine in the end, you know?
Good.
Yeah.
So that's how I test to see like if I can't generally tell. Because sometimes when you get like a huge wave of anxiety, it kind of knocks you out of your center. And so then you're kind of like, I don't know, you know? So then I use muscle testing if I'm feeling like, I don't know if my intuition's like super on point right now because my anxiety's pinging at a hundo. I feel like I was going to say something else, but now I can't think of it. Anyway, so that's generally how I feel through it.
That's a good one.
Very good. Julie, do you have any ways that you...
I'm trying to think if there's anything specific, but I'm kind of similar like Kat, where I just kind of like ask a little bit like more probing questions, like is there anything I need to do differently than what I'm on track to do right now? You know, I don't know. Sometimes it just feels different. Like it comes from like anxiety from like too many people or something comes from like my heart center, whereas like worry or being prepared for an instant comes from more like my gut. And I just like know that whatever is about to happen is about to be wrong and can change course if there's still time. But usually my gut, and sometimes like I have flashes in advance to like premonition-y. I knew about my car accident before it was going to happen. Which was
same
weird. Yeah.
And that's so shitty. Because it's like,
shitty.
You kind of know, but you don't fully know. And also you don't know like the when or the where. You just like have this vibe about it. Oh God, that was the worst.
Yeah. I knew my car was going to get totaled. I didn't know like much else other than that. But yeah, it sucked.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, I like what you said about kind of like where the energy comes from, whether it's yours or not. I feel like almost everything from my neck down is not my energy. Like if I feel something in any of those like energy centers and it feels like it's like radiating, I'm like, that's not me. Like I'm pulling this in from somewhere else. Like my head and like third eye, crown, like those are so much more where my like my messages come through for myself, that I'm like, oh, this is for me. Like, or, you know, I'm anxious, like I can feel all the wheels turning. And I think that's part of why I associate like a direct message with my own anxieties, is because it's in my head. Like that's how I process, that's where it happens. And, you know, I have the thought, versus when it's like, oh man, something feels off. I'm like, this isn't mine. Like somebody around me is not feeling great. Like when I feel like I'm just picking up a vibe of something, I'm like, okay. And usually it's, you know, neck down. Definitely not in my throat. My throat is me. But from there down, if I'm feeling anything big, it's sometimes I'm like, oh, weird. But I will, like, if I'm anxious, I'll feel it in my throat. Like if something's going to happen, the day that we went to the, I told you guys I had like a coughing attack when I got to the Utah Energy Healing Center.
Oh yeah.
I like coughed my head off, and then I had like this, and I just like sat there and I was like, wow, I have to like clear my throat. And so I'm like just standing there waiting for everything to kind of get started. And I was just like doing like ohms and like just trying to clear. It felt like there was something caught in my throat, and like I was coughing out loud. And I was just like, what is happening? Like, this is the weirdest thing. But like that knot in my throat ended up like totally, I needed to do some work and like get centered, because I had a crazy experience right after that. And so it's just so like, it's just a lot to like take on. And it's weird. Like that's the first time I've gotten things that felt like were stuck in my throat, but that's the first time that something so like clear happened with like an energy, like almost blockage, and then immediately like led on to something that I was like, oh, I needed to be prepared for this to happen.
Yeah, you literally had to clear your throat chakra because you had to use it.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say.
But yeah, so I would say like I can tell what energy parts in my body are mine, you know, and what's gonna affect me, versus like
I think that's the most important, right?
Yeah.
Knowing what's yours, knowing who you are, knowing what your feelings are. And I think the older we get, the better we're going to get at this.
Yes.
There's a benefit to getting older, guys. I found it.
Yay.
We might figure out all this chaos.
I feel like something that does kind of manifest, and if you think of it, a lot of the times in high school, like the popular kids end up growing up to be like the meaner ones. It's kind of a trope, kind of a stereotype. So I'm not trying to say this is everybody, but I almost think it's like the people who didn't, you know, need to do the work then were the people who they had their own energy. They were putting it out there, and everyone was like gravitating towards that energy. And as they grew up, they never learned how to have the exchange of energy that people need to like have a wholesome relationship, right? Like you have to be willing to let down your boundaries and let other people in. And like, also, I mean, just empathy in general. If you're not willing to hear out someone's emotions and those kinds of things. One of the podcasts I listened to talked about how empaths seem to attract narcissists a lot, because you are picking up their energy. You're willing to like give, you want to help them heal that energy, because you're making it your own problem, right? Like you're taking it on. You're like, oh my goodness, like let's get through this together. And
I wish I knew that in my 20s.
And then you're kind of like attracting the people, right, who have the problems, and then you're working on their problems for them. And so they're just like, okay, like yeah, thank you. Please take care of this for me. I'm going to keep living my life the exact same way.
That brings up my ex.
Yeah. I think it's one of the most kind of blatant ways that people don't think about that opposites attract, right? Because empaths are like give, give, give. Narcissists tend to be like take, take, take. Empaths are very situationally aware. They're looking outside all of the time, scanning for new information, you know, picking up bits of information. And narcissists are really like only looking at themselves. So it's like they're two, like it's total opposites that find this weird way of like feeding off of each other because of it. Obviously, if you don't have healthy boundaries around it. And it's crazy too, because almost without fail, even like the best of us that are like, I know the red flags. I know them. I see them. We still get pulled in, man.
Literally my whole summer.
Yeah.
And now I'm friends with the new ex.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's wild. But I think also like, okay, so you're saying narcissists are looking at themselves, but I think they're looking at themselves in a mirror, like superficially, where empaths take more time, like introspectively.
Mm-hmm.
So they recognize things, or like take more quiet time, where usually a narcissist doesn't have a whole lot of quiet time.
Right. Yeah. It's like, kind of the flip too there of empaths tend to be a little bit more introverted. Like we're very introspective. We always want to be cultivating and doing things on the inside. And narcissists tend to be a little bit more extroverted because they don't want to look at the inside. They want to be distracted by the flashy, shiny, whatever it is out in the world.
At all times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so interesting.
But they don't stop and do that reflective work. Because like I think, like you said, anybody could be an empath. And I always say anybody could be a healer. But you have to do that inner work and like know who you are and what your energy is and like get to that level.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and I think also of like energy vampires, right? So almost in a way that they are empathic, but not in a way that they're trying to help people process whatever's happening, or that they're just doing it totally different, right? They're not trying to transmute that energy into anything to benefit someone, and they're not trying to stop it from coming in. They're trying to take it, you know? And so they're not clinging on, but they're like attaching to people. And a lot of the time I feel like they will use a story to reel in an empath who's like, oh my goodness, like I'm going to help you with that. I want to help you get the house that you need for your children. But those people end up just kind of pulling in so much more than they ever give to a relationship. And that just kind of is like crazy thing after crazy thing just kind of happens. I also feel like a little bit it can happen with people who have the victim mentality, but I mean, narcissism, victim mentality, and then like energy vampires kind of all fall under the same sort of energy exchange, right? Like people who aren't necessarily giving energy, they're just taking it. And
I think there's a lot of crossover there too, because I think that there are like narcissistic people that are very in tune with energy. They just use it to take energy. But they do know how to manipulate it very, very well in that kind of way. I think that almost like you're probably two of those three things. You're probably narcissist, victim, energy vampire, at least probably like two of
some
those
overlap at all times.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm noticing some patterns.
yes.
Yeah. But I do think that if people that are like that eventually can recognize it, I think those people also can become very, very powerful, empathic people. Like it is inside of them. It's just like inverse. Like it's like the same skill set almost. It's just inverse, where instead of feeling other people's things, they want other people to feel them. Like they want the love. They want, feel how I'm feeling and love me, instead of, oh, I feel how that person feels. If that
They're
makes
John
sense.
Cusack outside with the radio.
Yeah.
Feel my feelings.
Yeah.
And I just ruined that movie for everyone.
Spoiler alert.
He was a narcissist. Just kidding. I don't remember that movie.
30 years later. Spoiler alert.
But yeah, I totally agree, Kat. That's great additions. It's so the energy, like every relationship we have is some sort of energy exchange. And so it's all about protecting your own energy. And, you know, when you are working with other people's energy, like, again, it all kind of comes back to ethics. And I know our next podcast to be released, but the one before this will be about ethics. And it all comes down to kind of consent. Like, you don't want to be doing work for people who don't want it. And I mean, you both kind of touched on it when we were talking about noticing someone's being empathic, but knowing they're not ready for that information is, you know, a way of like, okay, I'm kind of picking up on this thing, but it's your thing. And, you know, I'm going to talk with you about it, or I'm going to work through it with you. I had a friend who, like, we just had a really rocky relationship when it came to communication, and we had a huge falling out. And then we kind of got back in each other's lives. And I was like, listen, as long as we can have open and honest communication, I'm ready to be your friend. Like, but that's my one and only thing. And then it ended up kind of coming back, you know, that was just too much to ask for her at the time. And I was like, that's fine. But like, I'm not going to keep trying to force this thing to happen just because, you know, I am invested to this point. And so I think, you know, just making sure that even when people need that work done, that we're only doing it with what we're given. And like, if somebody's anxious, like, I don't need to just say, hey, you shouldn't be anxious, and like soothe them away. I can get rid of their anxiety, like through me, that I'm like, okay, well, I don't want this. Like, I'm not going to keep your anxiety, but I'm not going to be like, hey, let me just get rid of all your anxiety without talking to that person about it. Because one, they're not going to process stuff unless they're also working on it. And two, like, it's not my responsibility to just get rid of someone's emotions.
You gotta respect people's journeys and where they're at, you know? And that's like a hard lesson in my 40s, because I'm watching some of my 20-year-old friends make the dumbest fucking decisions. And I'm like, oh, okay, sometimes you just gotta respect people in the journey that they're at. Sometimes I'll even be like, hey, do you want my advice? Because if not, that's cool. But if you do, I probably wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
If you want to learn an easier lesson, I can maybe give some advice, because I did the dumb things too.
Yeah. I definitely think that's a hard place to navigate for sure, because a lot of us do have some experience that we're like, I can see where this may go. But also, I definitely think that there's a level of ego that gets involved that makes us want to step in and stop it or fix it.
Oh my God.
To be like, I know better. I know better than the universe and the path that you're on. So do the things that I say instead of what you're already doing, you know?
Yeah.
And it can be hard, right? Because on one hand, we're like, I can see where this may go. I've had a bad experience in the same line of things. I don't want that to happen for you. But we don't actually know if that's going to be their same path just because it was our path. And intervening, you know, may make it so that instead of them going on this path, now they're going to go on this path to come back right to where they were supposed to be in the first place. Like, we just don't know what is in other people's paths, but it definitely is hard. I mean, for sure, I have experienced that with friends, and now as a parent trying to circumnavigate when my intervention is warranted and when I need to let them trip and fall and just let them know, like, I'm here to help pick you back up, but I can't always stop the fall, you know? Yeah. It's really hard. I think that's one of the harder things about being a human, is knowing when to intervene on somebody's path and when to just hold space for them on whatever their journey is.
Yeah, I think that's been one of my harder lessons.
I think especially as an empathic person, because then we also like feel it inside of ourselves and we're like, and I think empathic people also have a lot easier time recalling our own emotions of like events that have happened. So that makes it even worse. It's not like, I remember that made me feel bad. It's like, as soon as you think of it, you feel the feeling of that moment inside of your body. And so we're like, I don't want them to have this feeling. So we try to be helpful, but I definitely think that sometimes my mom always, when I was a kid, she was like, you can't save them all, because I was like the collector of the fray, like all the kids that like were, you know, latchkey kids, which I also was, you know, but like, I just wanted to scoop them up and help them. And like, I had this thought, like, if I just hang out with them, then she won't smoke cigarettes anymore, or they won't do this thing anymore, which actually ended up the opposite thing happened, you know, because then I'm like, oh, I feel like you're having fun, so this must be fun.
Yeah.
But now I try to think about that too. Like, you can't save them all. It's not you're not a savior. I'm not a savior. That's not my job to save people. My job is to support people where I can and share what I know, because it may resonate with people and help them on their path. But, you know, like, I wouldn't even necessarily call myself a healer, because I don't do the healing. Like, I support you while you do the healing. But there is, I think, a huge part of our natural ego that just wants to scoop in. I think probably especially as women, because we are a little bit more nurturing, that we want to like just hold everybody like little baby birds, just be like, I'll save you.
I want to do it without the touching part. I'm a Capricorn.
Yeah.
I'm like, there. Here's some tissues and some spaghetti.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. I love that, Kat. I totally agree, especially like as being a mom, right? Because I can put myself in my shoes of like teenage me, and me and my mom clash so much that I am like, okay, how can I avoid that but still like instill lessons and be supportive? Luckily, but my kids are still young, so I'm not really to the point yet where they're not willing to take my advice. But you know, how does it happen when you do? You know, there's a book called Parenting with Love and Logic, and it's all about like having your kids have the experiences and make the decisions and learn. And then at the age of 12, you become an advisor, you know, and because that's how you get kids to not just rebel against you, right? Because they're going to make their mistakes. You can't force them to not make those mistakes, especially at that age, because they're just going to go behind your back and make the mistakes. So it makes me think of that kind of style. And it's, you know, we can be advisors on your journey. We can help guide and support wherever you need it, but it's still your journey. And I think that as an empath is something just important to learn, like, is to let go of the, oh, I'm going to take care of the problem that so many of us feel responsible for, you know, like, oh, you feel this way. Like, I felt that way. I can make it better. Like, I can do these things. And anyway, yeah, I love that. I have a friend who, he was a true and devout, like, member of the church. And his brother fell away, and his brother was so anti, and he was like, you need to leave. You should leave. Here's all the reasons you should leave. But my friend was like, no, I'm going to stay. And it was almost like the fact that his brother was so persistent about him needing to leave that friend stayed, and that friend stayed for so long. And then as an adult was like, well, this doesn't sit right. But because he was like so stubborn against what his brother's advice was, he just would not even consider it for the longest time. And so like he had to have the journey way later in life. And there is something to be said that when we try to interfere, that it's going to, you know, push people. Maybe they'll get to that path eventually, but they're probably going to veer off to a different space because we're trying to force them into the box.
Yep,
For sure. Yeah. I like that
say
example.
that for sure. Yeah, that was my like youth. My parents were like, don't do this, don't do this. And I was like, I'm going to go live my life. I need to experience things. I'm going to make a lot of dumb decisions and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Somehow I'm still alive.
Just to riff on something that Kat said. Kat, you mentioned that empaths' emotions are connected to memories, you kind of said. And I agree 100%, at least that my personal emotions are my memories. And it's one of the reasons, like, I have a lot of, like, I'll think back to, like, relationships that I've had with people, and I'm like, oh, yeah, we had, like, such a good time, because a majority of the time we did. And then maybe this one thing happened that I had totally was unemotionally connected to, but then they'll bring it up and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that's right, that did happen, you know. And it just is totally gone because it wasn't part of my emotional like processing of that friendship, you know. And so I definitely agree strongly that for me, my emotions are almost more of my memory than like actual events are. I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember feeling this way that night, but I don't remember what happened. Anyway, do either of you have that experience, or do you think that it's empath specific, or that it could just be individual?
I think it's everyone. You know, like if you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, they kind of hit on the psychology behind that like a lot of your emotion is tied to memory. I just think that with empathic people, we feel it more. Like I think other people just like that. I remember that made me happy, but that doesn't make them feel happy in the moment that they're remembering it. I think empathic people have the ability to think of that memory and then like they get a drop of serotonin. Like then they will actually feel physically happy just thinking of the memory. And now when I want to like lock a core memory, like if I'm having a super fun time doing something, I will like make it an intention. Like remember this feeling of happiness in this moment right now. So that I can like, because I know that in the future I'll be able to pull back to it. And now I have like specific memories where I can think of them and I will literally start laughing because I'm like, oh my God, that was so funny. And like, I'll feel the whole experience almost of that memory.
It's a portal.
Yeah, exactly. In the now time. And I'm not sure that everyone has the ability to, without working on it, to physically feel it in your body, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've kind of struggled with because I felt very like detached from my emotions. I was like a pastor's kid, very good at masking, but I was pretty much like, kind of astral projecting. What is it called in the psychology world?
Disassociating?
Super dissociative. I was like missing like giant pieces because there was like so much repetition as a kid of listening to the sermons and traveling and doing these things and like literally just meeting so many people constantly. So I have like a pretty big chunks of like memory like missing. But as an adult, I've done active work of like, okay, remember this feeling, associate it with such and such. So like creating these little like mood portals to like go back and like if I have excess energy, this is what my baseline energy feels like now. This is where I'll store extra happiness. This is where I'll store safety and comfort, so I can go quickly to those memories and access those feelings. But yeah, I didn't learn how to do that until way later, more recently for sure.
Yeah, I didn't learn how to do that either until like within probably the last 4 or 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, I think mine was with from mushrooms because you got to have that like, where's your happy, safe space in case something goes wrong? And yeah, finding those happy places are really where you make those portals for those other days.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
I did have another thought and I cannot remember what it was now.
Sorry.
Oh well, it is what it is. It wasn't important.
That's fine.
Winston,
Well,
stop attacking it.
There will be more podcasts.
Yeah. And it all is intertwined too, so eventually it'll come back around to it.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Do you feel like we've done a good job kind of covering the topic? Or does anybody else have any other additions or questions or anything?
I'm good on my end. I was gonna interview a couple of my friends that are like super empaths that are on different journeys, because I'm just curious to hear like what everyone's things are, because maybe we can all find something that works for us that's new, you know?
Yeah.
I love it.
What works for me might not work for you.
Yeah. Maybe I'll put a call here that says, if you consider yourself an empath, or if you've had an experience that you felt like was empathic, or what your journey is, reach out to us. Like, give us a call.
1-800.
No, yeah.
Manifest.
Send us a message, or reach out. We would love to get a chance. We could get together on Zoom or create a video or something, and we'd love to hear your story. Send us a message. We're on all the places. Our email would probably be the best place, at academyoflogicandlight@gmail.com. And yeah, we would love to hear if you have any stories, or if you have any fun topic ideas that you want to hear us talk about, or if you maybe want to guest star on one of our podcasts, or if you're interested in teaching a class with us. We're just trying to help break down the boundaries that are up around these spiritual practices and help make it accessible to people, and just help people on their journeys figure out where they're going. I'm super excited for our retreat, and I know we've talked a lot about like different psychic abilities and how empathy kind of can be looked at with your intuition and different ways that you're picking up hits. And that's a lot of what my workshop at our retreat is going to be about, is helping people recognize when their intuition is talking to them and when it might be somebody else, and helping you define that about yourself and learn how to tap into your own personal power when it comes to these things and make your gifts work for you. So that's what my workshop and retreat at the retreat is going to be all about, is really harnessing our intuition and learning a little bit about the clairs, clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairsentience. Like there's like at least 6, but we'll talk about those, and we'll have some fun exercises to do as well. And those will kind of lead into some of our other workshops and help us connect.
It's so funny when you were like, oh, it's going to be about empaths. I was like, what the fuck am I going to say about empaths for an hour? And that's been 2 hours. I'm like, oh shit. Actually, there was a lot more in there than I thought there was.
Yeah, that's why I was like listening to podcasts and like trying to do all the stuff like while I'm taking care of the kids. I was like, I need as much empath stuff as I can get, because I don't even know what I would say about them. And then as I was listening to things, or like things would come up, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that, like, and that's why I had the answer I did at the beginning, was only because I had done all this like introspection while I was listening to empath stuff, that I was like, okay, it's what I call my abilities. It's my empath.
Yeah, I think it's just a term that we could just like build off of, but one of those like psychic, like
yeah
healer.
I mean, it's a more acceptable form, and it's not saying, hey, you need to harness it. It's just like identifying an attribute that you have and how you can either protect yourself and keep yourself safe and not interact with other people's energies, or how, if you are interacting with other people's energies, how to do it in a way that you're not absorbing it.
And without being like super woo-woo, because like there's no way my dad would have told me about it if he had ever considered the word empath to be woo-woo.
Yeah.
He was trying to keep me away from the culty stuff. But,
yeah. And I do think a lot of that, like with the words specifically, because empath is just one of them. Like, I also don't like healer. And like, I think it's just my own shit because I don't like the way that those words are like abused and like so over, like, you know,
I turn.
they just make me, those words just make me think of the girls that all have long blonde hair and all wear the same hat and go to the weekend retreat. And now they're leading with light and love and all they do.
Yeah.
And that's the bypassers.
The Instagram models.
Yeah. Those words just make me think of that. And I'm just like,
witch talk people.
You ruined our words.
Yeah. Well, and I am totally with Kat, and it's probably also why I don't like gravitate towards angel numbers either. It's because I'm just like, this has become too mainstream in a way that I just don't love. And because, like, sure, maybe I could learn about it and like have my own relationship with those things. Like even our name, Academy of Logic and Light, I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I love what it's portraying. I love what it's trying to say, but I'm like, ooh, okay.
We got to reframe it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's what I was talking with my friend Caitlin, who's come to a couple of the events now. And I was talking to her and she was like, I'm not a love and light girly. I was like, neither are we. That's the point. Like, it's logic and light, not love and light, because we want to bring everything together. We're not trying to be like, let's just pretend it doesn't exist and it's fine. No, we're trying to be like, girl, get in here. We're working on shit.
Let's use some logic.
Yeah. And she's come to a couple events and she's like, I love it. Like, you guys are great. And what you're doing is awesome. And I was like, see, it's fine. It's all good.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining the A.L.L podcast.
To find out more, you can find us online at academyoflogicandlight.org or on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Academy of Logic and Light.
If you live in the Salt Lake Valley, we'd love to see you at one of our upcoming events.
And don't forget to support our growth by joining our Patreon.
Until next time, lead with logic and light.